Welcome to the Gaming Tailgate Podcast. I am CDJ, joined once again by Tommy and JBHuskers. Guys, how's it going?
Good. Finally got to starting to get some real information now. We can actually have something to truly dive deep into officially from EA.
Yeah, it was good to see the some gameplay videos just to look at, on the surface how beautiful the game truly looks right now, and a lot of excitement coming out of this past week.
You mean you guys didn't want another week of rumors and discussions? Well, it is better to have a gameplay blog. Real quick, we want to thank everyone for checking us out. We've had a lot of growth on the podcast over the last few weeks, especially on Spotify. So please subscribe, follow, leave us a 5-star review, and make sure you go to thegamingtailgate.com. Click on that EA Sports College Football Information Central. What that's going to get you is everything out there about the game. So if it's a day where there's not a lot of news and you think, have I caught up on everything out there? I'm going to say the answer is no. And you can find everything you've missed out on this page. A lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of pictures, a lot of articles, a lot of videos, all here in one spot. If you ever want to catch up on the game, this is the place to go to. We're going to get into tonight gameplay, as you guys have mentioned. That was the big thing over the past week or so. There was an EA Sports event, basically almost about 10 days ago down in Orlando for college football media and creators. To start off with, let's give a kind of a setup on the event, what we have been able to figure out from their postings and articles online. They invited in over 20 attendees between college football media and YouTube content creators and also some game media as well. We have that in an article on thegamingtailgate.com. We put all their content in one spot. If you want to see, for example, everywhere Matt Brown has talked about the game, his 2 articles. He's been on 4 to 5 shows already since then talking about it. We've gathered those all in one spot, so you don't have to hunt and peck and go through every YouTube channel or every Twitter feed. We did all that work. We're the ones who got bored and did all that stuff. So make sure you check out that page, everything there in one spot. The college football media and the content creators did a great job, but they were in kind of a bad spot, in my opinion. They only had, per their own words, about 3 to 4 hours for playing and interviews. They had to start off the day with the presentation, which is great, but then they had to balance their time between playing the game and getting interviews. Then the previous day was Madden 25, which they are not able to talk about at this time. A lot of gameplay. They did play now. Road to Glory and Dynasty info they did receive via presentation, but obviously that's one of those, we're going off of what they were told, what they heard. They did not play it firsthand. So it's kind of a game of telephone. When we talk about Dynasty and Road to Glory later on in the show, that's not something they played or directly saw. So first off, if you have not watched the gameplay video narrated by Kirk Herbstreit, I would recommend go check that out. Then go look at this great and lengthy blog they put out about gameplay. I think it's one of the longest gameplay blogs I can remember EA Sports putting out, maybe for any title. NBA 2K historically has put out long gameplay blogs. This is a long gameplay blog, which I think a lot of people appreciated.
Oh, Gallagher said if they do a Dynasty one, it's going to be twice this size. So we may get a bigger one down the line.
I sure hope so.
Yeah, maybe they may have to split it up into 2 different articles or something like that.
Have to, yeah.
We're going to go through quite a bit of this article, obviously not everything, because otherwise we'd have like a 3-hour show. And no offense, I don't want to edit a 3-hour show. So let's go through each section. If you guys see something or build onto it, let me know. The big one right off the bat is they talk about the wear and tear system. It's sort of a fatigue system, an injury system that will last not only game to game, but week to week. Target specific body parts should make depth matter. Throughout the video, we saw a lot of pictures of where the injuries occur. One thing worth noting right off the bat, no head or neck injuries. I think community members notice that we see through these screens and the videos and from the college football media at the event, everything but. So in this EA Sports world, in this EA Sports universe, no head or neck injuries, which is great. But we do have the other ones, and it becomes a important factor. And in one of the articles I read, I'll let you guys weigh in now, finally, I'm tired of rambling. One of the, I believe, media members said that at one point, due to injuries, his quarterback had a hit of 47 points, I believe, off his overall. I don't think it was a passing rating. I'm not sure. So he speculated. I think it might have been Chris Vanini. Don't quote me on that. I've read so much and read so much over the last week, I don't even remember who said what at this point. But he speculated that maybe at some point this might need to be toned or tweaked. What did you guys think from everything we read and saw about wear and tear?
From what I read and everything, to me, it's a very welcome addition. Hopefully it's done right. And like you said, it's tuned correctly. But to me, having your entire roster matter, especially now that we have 85 players on the roster, having that matter is the important thing. I don't know how many times, even in Madden, as recently as this past year, I'd have 3 studs at running back, and trying to get all of them carries is almost impossible. So now in this case, not only is it, if you have a depth in your team, then you can use the whole depth, hopefully. But then as well, if you don't have that depth, then it's going to show. So if you've got one stud middle linebacker and then the guy behind him is 30 points lower, then in theory that's going to show through. So to me, this is a great thing, and hopefully it translates well onto the field.
Yeah, like just looking at some of the stuff that was in the gameplay trailer, you could see where the Oklahoma quarterback is getting beat up, and some of those are resulting in some poor plays. Not necessarily the Oklahoma quarterback, but another quarterback. There was a bad interception. And so I think the fact that you can have your arm hurting, like if the quarterback gets hit on his throwing hand, just stuff like that is going to add a lot to the gameplay. And as Tommy said, with the running backs, you're not going to be able to ride a horse like you might have been able to in the old days of PS2 and PS3. You're going to have to kind of manage your backs, hope and have yourself a good stable of backs, just in case. My only question is, I don't know if anybody's really even talked about it, but how easy is it going to be able to swap in your second guy if your first guy is starting to show some signs of wear? How easy is that going to be, or is it going to be like Madden where you got to find a play in the playbook where that back is featured? That's going to be kind of a question going forward with this wear and tear.
Yeah, for sure. The auto subs has to be tuned correctly for this to really work. If you want to do it organically without having to do a lot of manual switch in and out and things like that, the auto subs really has to come into play, in my opinion, which, like I said, on Madden, it doesn't work very well.
No.
You can't get your guys to come in and out off the field. Once they're off the field, it's hard to get them back on in some cases. So
yeah, with running backs, that's about the only thing you could do is just find a play where that back is featured. So, and I personally wouldn't mind having a good manual system as long as it's intuitive and easy to put in there. I don't know if that's going to be anything in this game, because just based on some of the videos and things we've seen so far, it doesn't appear so until they get really hurt. And then it asks you to sub in. So it's going to be interesting to see if at least there's a good auto system. I'd love to see a good manual system, though, on top of that as well.
On the previous show, Mike Straw Online had reported that he heard the option game was a big focus area for the team. That's one of those, I think, was kind of a obvious thing. We knew that when Madden doesn't have the option game to the same extent as college football. This blog talks about kind of a big change in focus, and that obviously option game is fundamental to college football. One thing they've done now is what's different is the X no longer is to run the option. Now that's kind of like to pull the ball, which is more realistic, but obviously it's going to be a change if you played the game in the past historically. There's going to be a lot of muscle memory in this game that's going to have to go away. If you play a lot of NCAA football, a lot of muscle memory's got to go away in the pre-play, and now in the option, you're going to have to relearn a few things. Talks about the changes to the pull mechanic, simplifying the reads, makes RPOs much more usable. If you don't touch anything, the quarterback will simply hand the ball off to the running back. Tommy, what do you think about some of these changes? We also hear about holding down for a strong pitch, double tapping for a fake pitch. Just, it sounds like there's a lot of options through these same buttons we had in the past, but different at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, muscle memory is a big thing. Even if you're playing Madden right now, that's still the same old style of press X to hold it up, hand it off in a lot of cases. Obviously the RPOs and stuff, it's a little bit different, but yeah, long story short, it is definitely going to take some getting used to. I'm curious if they do like Madden where they have the trainer for the different features. So maybe they have one for option as well here. Something to kind of speed up that learning process. But yeah, all in all, definitely a welcome change. The pressing the X, like you said, to me, that's more a matter of more realistic. You're making a decision at that point to pull it. And then the new pitch system, I'm very curious to see how that'll work with the fact that the strong versus quick or whatever, to see is there really good scenarios where one works that much better than the other or what it may be. So yeah, long story short, I'm excited. I've always loved running the option, so I look forward to seeing how this works out and translates.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see if wear and tear is going to play into that too. If maybe your pitch is not going to be as accurate if you have a red arm, so to speak, within the wear and tear.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, when you've got Army and Navy running, 30 times a game running option or whatever, then that's going to build up over time. Hopefully hopefully it's tuned correctly to where you can still run the option all game long if you want to, but at the same time, you can't just take hit after hit. You're going to have to slide more or run out of bounds or whatever it is to kind of save your quarterback a bit.
I don't watch a lot of the Air Force games and Army games, but do they use two quarterbacks a lot to save on wear and tear in real life, or do they usually stick with just one guy?
Generally, it's just one guy. You don't switch them in and out or anything like that. Obviously, there's more called runs, like, just, fullback blast or whatever. So, that'll be part of it as well. But at the same time, yeah, they're taking tons of hits all game long.
Yeah, so that's going to be another thing to keep in mind too. Just the toll that it's going to take with this new system too. Not just in terms of pitching, but in terms of you running that option and that quarterback taking a lot of hits. That's going to be real interesting to see just how, if you almost have to implement a two quarterback system if you're using these type of schools in the game.
The other thing worth mentioning here is the I don't know if it's in the article or not, but I saw it mentioned somewhere. Again, like you said earlier, so much information this week. I can't remember where it was, but now once you reach like 2 yards downfield, you no longer have the quarterback running the animation with the ball at his chest. Instead, you're a full-on runner at that point. So you don't have to worry about the quarterback being half speed or whatever. He is now a full runner. And obviously he could still pitch it technically, but at the same time, he can run a little bit faster at that point.
The blog also mentions they've introduced new pitch out of tackle animations. This clip kind of shows that here with the Texas A&M quarterback all but wrapped up and able to pitch the ball out. And I will say, at least in my opinion, there's a clip in that trailer of the Air Force quarterback that to me looked like he should have been completely tackled, and he pitches a perfect pitch out of it. So
we saw that so much in the old games.
I think that's probably something really, really tough to eliminate, but it is worth noticing that made the trailer. And when we watch it in kind of slow motion, I thought, okay, that's one I hopefully in retail will not be like that.
One of the other big things with the option this year now, it seems as though the pitch indicator or the read key is not nearly as blatantly obvious as it has been in the past. I know Madden does a little bit better job than what NCAA 14 did, but at the same time, the players won't just be stand still like they were in 14. It seems like you'll have to actually read and still get it wrong half the time. The other side is that they put kind of situational defense so that if it's 3rd and 1, they're going to crash on the running back more often than they will the quarterback, things like that. Or as well, they mentioned the wide side of the field. They'll cover the quarterback more often because he can break outside. So definitely be curious to see how all that translates. Hopefully it's not a system that you can abuse just because it's a certain situation. But at the same time, it's, again, all of this is welcome because 14 to me was way too easy to run the option. So anything to increase that challenge definitely is a good thing.
And I think something we're going to talk about here down the line, I think some of those abilities, mental and, you got mental and physical abilities now. They're separating out mental with physical. And I think some of those may come into play as well in terms of being able to read the defense and vice versa.
The blog goes on to talk about how base alignment is now gone, but they're adding in coverage shells and the ability to disguise your coverage. We don't get to see this quite in action, I believe, anywhere, but it's another option now the defense has. The article obviously focuses mainly on offense because offense sells. Everybody wants to hear how you can score and put up points. Nobody wants to hear how you're not going to score in the game. That doesn't really sell or sound too impressive. What do you guys think about this option? I've seen a lot of people talk about, especially Madden fans, saying they wish they had this. And for all we know, they will in 25. We don't know that as of now, but obviously that people are very excited about this, especially like the blog says, you can unleash your inner coach.
Yeah, to me, this is a wonderful addition. For one thing, one of the annoyances I had with defense, and I'm hoping that translates here, but we'll see. But with the defense, you'll have a cover 3, show 2 as a set play. Whereas now in theory, you can call cover 3 and then change it to show 2 or show 4 or whatever, so that you can kind of disguise that a little bit differently. Again, I love the idea. Anything more in the defense's back pocket to be able to kind of adjust and show different looks. To me, that again is a great thing. It allows you to, for example, you could call prevent defense for whatever, but then make it look like you're in cover 0. So, I mean, again, it's something that hopefully it's not easy to abuse or anything, but at the same time, the more tools that you have on defense, all the better.
And hopefully it's easy to do because there's a lot of, as we'll get into later on, there's a lot of pre-snap stuff that you need to look at or can change or you just need to keep up with. I wonder how easy is it going to be to do all this stuff? And he does mention it in this segment. Tread with caution. If your defensive back has low composure, there's a risk they might mess up the disguised look, which I think is interesting, that even if you call something right or call what you want, the players may mess it up, which is realistic. But I wonder the first time it happens in a big moment, if people will say, well, I don't want realism all of a sudden. I told this guy to do this. Why is he messing it up?
Yeah.
The big one is, JB, you mentioned this earlier, abilities. This one is, as they clarified, there's 80, maybe over 80 different abilities. And as the blog says, purely situational boost. There's no guarantees per the blog. As you mentioned, there's a max of 8 a player can have, 5 physical, and that's tied to their player archetype, 3 mental, tied to their position. The blog and the video kind of show us a lot of these, and we're trying to track these on the gamingtailgate.com. We obviously don't have a lot of them, the descriptions at least yet, but we do have quite a few of the names. Throughout the blog, we see, field general, option king, workhorse, downhill, just shown in this one. The one that got a little bit of, I don't want to say heat or pushback, but some of the competitive Madden players came back from the event and said that now I don't know if it's from experience or just from reading what it does, the field general one, where on the platinum level, can identify blitzers, coverage shell, and disguise coverages pre-snap. Their concern was that's just too easy. That's just not realistic necessarily. But I don't know that I ever heard if that was because they saw it or read it. And at the same time, we know per the blog, there's no guarantees. So just because your player thinks he sees a certain blitzer or shell or coverage, do we know that that's always accurate?
For sure. And as well, it may show that they're on a blitz, but it doesn't necessarily show, are they blitzing inside, blitzing outside? Maybe you're blitzing 2 linebackers, but then you have 2 defensive linemen dropping into coverage or something like that. So again, to me, platinum should be very rare. In theory, 1, maybe 2 quarterbacks should have field general platinum, from my opinion. So platinum should be very rare. So it's not like you're going to be able to do this with every single quarterback in the game. And 2, like you said, it's not going to just be a surefire 100% give you the exact play of what the defense is running. It's going to be something that in all reality, you have quarterbacks that can read the defense and make those decisions and say, all right, this is what's coming, that kind of thing. So I'm not afraid of it as long as it's not overdone and you don't have, half of the quarterbacks with that level of accuracy.
And some of it depends on the player ratings, because the player might be able to see all this stuff, but if they don't have the greatest passing ratings, can they take advantage of it? And also if the user quarterback, are you still going to make the right read? Yeah, you can have it handed to you on a silver platter, but you can still make a mistake.
Yeah. Did they say that you could progress too, so bronze can get to platinum eventually if they perform, or
that's a good. I was a good question. I was actually on my notes. You must have peeked over my shoulder. Do we know or ever hear if they can up? I mean, I have an assumption or guess, but did we ever see definitively when or how this occurs?
Because I know in the video, Kirk says for the coaching tree, it's going to take you multiple years to max all that out. So I'm kind of wondering if this is going to be a difficult thing to get to platinum. Like Tommy had said, only 1 or 2 quarterbacks should really have it. So I'm kind of wondering if the progression or the tree of that is something similar to where it's going to take a while or be almost impossible for some people to even get there at some point.
Yeah, I'm curious if you can either increase it. So let's say a freshman comes in at bronze, and by the time he's a senior, he's a platinum or something like that. Or B, if let's say you're as a junior, you unlock it and it goes from 0 to platinum. To me, that's not very realistic. So, it has to be able to progress over time. Freshmen should never come in with anything platinum from my perspective.
I agree.
So, to me, it has to be something that gradually over time and throughout their career. Again, the longer they're in school, if they're in school for 5 years, then I can see more often getting platinum. But again, 3rd year, you shouldn't see that very often.
I would assume that how you play with them, and like your dynasty, for example, if you have a great season, I would think it would progress, but is it going to be smart enough to realize, like if you pass a lot, maybe the field general goes up, or if you run a lot of option, then option king goes up. I would assume it works that way, but that's a bold assumption because we never hear that in anything I've read, at least so far.
I'm pretty sure they said it's tied to archetype. So if you have a pocket passer, then he'll get field general, but never get option king kind of thing. So I mean, again, maybe if you run more passes, then you have more of a chance to get field general. But they didn't really say. So I'll be curious to see how that works out.
Here's a look at Travis Hunter. I think this is a kind of a player page, which is kind of cool. I think the face really looks like him. For the most part, I know it's tough because some of the players got criticized throughout the video and blog that they don't really. Quinn Ewers especially has facial hair that I don't think he's ever. He looks like a bleach blonde Tony Stark kind of, but Travis Hunter here looks pretty good. I did see one guy said he looks like the Fiend from WWE with the dreads and something in the face, and I can afford after he said that I kind of see that. You got to see a look at both his physical and mental traits, and it looks like he starts off with I believe that's gold. It's tough to tell with these smaller pictures what the exact colors are when you have, bronze to platinum. So, but I'm assuming a guy like him, he's coming in very highly right out of the bat with some of those.
So here on the screen, we do have a screenshot of kind of what it looks like pre-snap. I'm guessing these are looks like only some of them have it even showing. So I guess maybe it's only available to certain level of players or something like that. But to me, this is a lot of information to try to decipher in a very short time. So, you almost have to do scouting ahead of time. But to me, this is too busy from my perspective. And it seems like so much information that it's going to be easy to get lost. Like I said, you almost have to scout your opponent ahead of time and see what they are good at. And if they have a field general, then you're going to be calling more pass coverages or something like that.
I completely agree. That was on the thumbnail for this video when they showed Carson Beck with that over the same thing over his head. I thought, well, if we see that during the game, like you're gonna have to play on a big TV to see all those icons and have a good memory to remember all the icons. And then when we get this blog and the in-game picture of this, all I could think is, if you don't have a big TV, you're not going to see what they are. So, like you said, I think it's going to come down to a matter of if you didn't scout, I'm just going to come here and look real quick. Okay, he's a really good player. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know specifically. Like I need to fear this guy. Pretty good player. No offense to this wide receiver. Not too worried about him. Right?
Yeah,
So, I mean,
you know what you could also do is with your picture-in-picture play calling, you could alternate screens between wear and tear and the abilities of maybe the last guy that touched the ball, and instead of having all that stuff on the field, have it in the play-by-play screen.
Yeah, there's something they'll need to do something with it, because I think otherwise it's going to be too easy to, like, the abilities feature is cool and it sounds really cool, but just the way it's presented here is just too
Looks
much.
weird.
I don't know how you. Yeah. I don't know how you. I don't have an idea to improve it. I just know this is a little much.
To me, the way to improve it is only highlight ones that are gold, maybe. If they're bronze or something like that, maybe don't highlight it on this screen. But if they're gold, then it's even more important kind of thing. Again, you can do scouting in between plays or scouting ahead of the game or something like that. But yeah, I think, just showing Ollie Gordon with two gold statuses, to me, that show me what those two gold statuses mean,
And then you kind of see here that you can kind of see the break between the mental and physical, because you get three here. So the mental's on top, physical's on bottom. So this guy will have the mental stuff, doesn't have the physical ones, whereas Ollie Gordon basically is loaded to the gills with he has all eight. I don't know. I don't know what I'd recommend. I think your idea is good, but it's just the idea is solid here. It's just too much.
Too many parentheses on the screen.
So, what if you run like some kind of trick formation, like where you have like a stacked up in a bunch or something, and on one side you have your whole screen. If you have like three great receivers, you won't be able to see anything. You're just going to see right parentheses.
But I mean, at the same time, I don't think it's defaulting to that. I think that's like a manual selection with the right that they're showing.
It is. So. It's Coach Cam. So I mean, you have to pull it up, and if you scroll back up, it also shows different position groups. So like we were looking at the wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback, but then there was the linebackers, I think, for example. So there in the bottom left-hand corner, it shows O-line. It's hard to read across the screen, but O-line, linebackers, and DBs, and then obviously the bottom one we can't really tell. So, long story short, it's a lot of information, and I can't imagine that you'd be looking at that so often.
You have to also memorize all the icons. It's like,
I don't think you could see them if you're not playing on a big TV. You're not gonna have it memorized.
Let alone, you can't even see them, but you'd have to still memorize them too. So, I don't know. It seems like it could be implemented better somewhere else.
Just for example, I've zoomed into 130% of my computer with a high-res image, and granted, we don't have these memorized yet, but I mean they're very tough to see. I don't know how they resolve it, but at least now they have to look for 26 to work on.
Yeah, and to me, I think probably you would learn the important ones, like field general, for example. But again, it all comes down to, can you decipher the colors very easily? platinum versus silver. Is it going to be
Right.
easy to decipher?
Uh-huh.
And then even at a quick glance, unless they're side by side, gold versus bronze, even that to me looks like it's, hard to really to look at.
I agree, because
I
is this gold or is this? I think that's bronze, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough to make
yeah.
this out. Might
Yeah.
be different when I get to my retail finally on July 16th, but as of right now, I agree with you. And we'll get to it later with some of the coach vision stuff. I'm kind of surprised at the colors they picked, because on one, red is positive and the other is red negative,
Oh
which
yeah,
I
yeah.
can see both sides of it. But
Yeah,
all right,
like platinum's gonna have to have like a sheen on it or something, a shine on it or something to make it different, because otherwise it's just gonna look the same on that type of
mm.
screen.
All right, confidence and composure. This is a big one that we've heard about with a lot of the teases of the feature, and when they come in and describe it. Obviously, the example they keep using is freshman versus a senior. Your freshman's going to be rattled, your senior's going to be composed. And generally, I agree with that assessment. But we do see once in a while where the freshman comes in and he's the better player. And sometimes the freshman can come in and be composed. I'm interested to see how they handle that. But let's go through confidence and composure. Composure is individualized and it's driven by their player's archetype, which we don't really get into in this blog, unfortunately. For instance, when your player starts to cook, they will have, and it goes through their improved ratings, but it shows you also the graphics. Mental abilities influence composure. And as Scott mentions in this blog, he will leave the heavy details for the Dynasty blog, but the coach abilities also play a role in composure. So we'll get to that later in Dynasty. Not only do the players have all these, the coach can affect these. So there's a lot of things going on here. Let's get to coach vision, because that also will show some of these things. Yes.
Real quick, it is interesting, just kind of rereading the blog a little bit.
Mm.
It does say that once a player goes cold, their mental abilities are gone completely. So, I mean,
Mhm.
that's kind of, an important thing, that if your player is having a poor game, then his mental abilities, if you've been relying that all season, now you're not going to be able to use that one. So,
Yeah, and some of the videos I've shown the snowflake and the flames, kind of your typical hot and cold too. So you'll be able to see those in a little icon on the field as well, to determine what your guys are at right now.
And it kind of makes you hope that is there a way to get out of a cold situation? I know in NBA 2K, when your player got cold, you think, okay, I'm going to try to make a layup here, a close range shot. And then it seemed like they could never make the layup. You'd be so cold that the player would be useless the rest of the game. I hope that's not the case here. Obviously, you want the cold to mean something. So you want to either call something for them or get them out of the game. But at the same time, you don't want to be where they can never come out of it. Coach
yeah, that's the
vision.
thing, is does benching them influence positive or negative? I mean, if you take them out for a few
Mm.
plays, do they kind of snap out of it, or
Get
do they get deeper into it because
Mhm.
now the coach doesn't trust them, kind of thing?
The pre-snap, as we showed a little bit earlier with that Oklahoma State picture, coach vision lets you see pre-snap information. Basically, you hold the left trigger, and then whatever direction you hold will give you a look. Wear and tear, which I don't think we get to see. Confidence and composure. Now, when it goes red, it means they're starting to cook. That's the phrase they like to use. Blue means they're getting cold. A red flame icon or blue snowflake symbol appears. They've reached the maximum in that area. What's interesting here is red means good, and it's kind of what I'd call on the plus side to the right as the meter fills up. Blue looks like it drops. So that's how that one works. Abilities, that's the one we showed a minute ago. Just a lot going on there. And then matchups. We don't get to see that, but they've reworked the matchup formula. This is something they've had in the previous versions of the title. It's now they're color coded for ease of understanding. Green for a favorable matchup, yellow for even, red for a disadvantage. So they are trying to make some of this so you can quickly assess it, because there is a lot you can do now with the coach vision to go through those 4 different tabs to figure out abilities,
with
composure,
that,
With
wear and tear.
yeah, that looks like a sliding scale. So you may be correct. If you bench them, maybe they do go back to neutral, since it appears to be a sliding scale on that first graphic there.
Yeah. The other thing, talking about the matchups, to me, that with the wear and tear the way it is, that is all the more important. If you've got a third string corner that's come in because of injuries or wear and tear or whatever, in theory, your starting receiver will have such a high matchup that you'll want to go to him over and over or something. So at the end of the day, to me, all of these individually, they're not super significant. I mean, obviously they're big changes, especially compared to what we used to have. But at the end of the day, it's how all of these work together. If you have wear and tear, then you're going to have more matchup issues or something like that. If maybe as well wear and tear, they're going to go have a cold streak because either you're not feeding them the ball as often, or they can't make the catch because their arm's broken or whatever it may be. To me, that's again, it all factors in together to combine to make a big impact, I think, at the end of the day.
This is a big one. The community always wanted more home field advantage. We had it somewhat always in the past. They're bringing it back, and it seems like a big way in this game, at least what we've heard so far from the video and also from the attendees at the event. Right off the bat, we see stadium polls. That was back in, I believe, NC06. Seems like they went back through a lot of the old versions of the game and pulled out some key features and figured out how they could either bring it in or enhance it. And stadium pulse being one. We don't have the crowd silhouette, though, above it, like we did in 06. That's probably better in a way, so it doesn't block as much of the screen. Right off the bat, we have the stadium pulse, and just to this clip, we can see the screen shake. We get as we see later on, the play icons go missing. The field art goes wacky in a more than ever. In a way. So obviously the things we talked about earlier, confidence and composure play a role. Playing on the road obviously affects that. So maybe you want to go with more of a senior laden lineup. I think that's kind of what they're kind of pushing us toward. It's worth noting you can tell the crowd to get louder by flicking up on the right stick. See, Madden removed the ability to kind of get the crowd louder a couple years ago, and I don't know why they did that. That's always fun. I don't know why they did that. They mentioned the audio team improved the audio with new stadium mixes. That's great. I think the community thought was always the crowd was too quiet in previous, even when they're supposed to be really ruckus and just, being on top of the crowd, the audio just was not there. But I think it's interesting they note that home field advantage only impacts the visiting team because Madden's home field advantage system can also affect the road team, which was kind of a weird design decision, no offense. And they say, just like in real life, this feature is entirely situation based. The louder the crowd gets, the higher the modifier and composure hits. They really wanted that hostile environment. I'm anxious this is one of my most features I'm looking forward to most when I get this game home on retail. Crank up the surround sound and see if it really feels like I'm playing in front of, say, 100,000 people at Penn State. What do you guys think? From what we know so far of home field advantage, Tommy, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's a welcome addition, especially in college football. Composure and home field advantage are huge factors, in my opinion. So I think this is a great addition. I just hope it's not overdone. I mean, we always say that about every new feature that EA introduces. Just hopefully it's not overdone. But at the same time, I'll be curious if you automatically start with near full stadium pulse, or if you're playing at Michigan at noon with a Sun Belt team, is it going to be the same hype level versus Michigan State versus Michigan or Ohio State versus Michigan or something like that? Hopefully it's something that is tailored to the situation. They kind of suggest that it is, but at the same time, I don't want it to just be the whole game that it's always maxed out or something like that. Third and fourth down, that's when it should max out.
Yeah, I'm interested to see too the toughness rank. I don't know how high it goes up. I want to say maybe 50. I thought I saw some parts where it was in the 30s. I'd be curious once we get into Dynasty talk if that adjusts based on performance from year to year and it gets re-ranked or something like that.
Yeah, surely it's kind of, I think the old system would be the more you win, the tougher it gets. But at the same time, if you're in front of a crowd of 30,000, it's not going to be the same versus, in front of a crowd of 100,000.
Yeah, just like if maybe Penn State have some few rough years and then some bigger schools are having better years, I wonder if they kind of jump Penn State for a time there if when you progress through your years in the Dynasty.
There's some new pre-play controls, and the one we want to kind of focus on here is custom stems. Basically lets you set passing route depth from the pre-play screen. It's one of those that a lot of Madden fans saw this and said, we want that, which, who knows, they might get that in 25. What do you guys think of custom stems? It's basically, it seems like it's a pre-play play editor in a way.
Yeah, I mean, to me, is that so different than versus the, run to the first down line? That's kind of the default that you can say extend it to pass the first down. Or can you say take this post and make it, 2nd and 1 and make the post route 20 yards deep or something like that? I'd be curious to see how exactly that works in the end. But then as well, how fast you can do it. Is it something that you have to cycle through all the different depths or how does it work? So
the way I understand is you can do it 1 yard increments or 5 yard increments, but it doesn't tell you like if I do the 5 yard increments, can I all of a sudden have them go 40 yards downfield and run the route, or is it contained within 20 yards?
Yeah, a
Yeah.
It never
40-yard out
clarifies.
route.
Yeah, it doesn't clarify that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about that though is you can not necessarily have to go for the first down, but if you see something on the field, you see a gap if they're running zone or something like that, you can maybe exploit that by having the custom stem there.
The other thing to kind of highlight here is the video kind of shows it that now there's three different, hot route sections: the left stick, the right stick, and also the D-pad. In the past, it's only been the two, if I'm not mistaken. I know definitely in 14 it was only the two, but I don't think Madden has three even. So I'd be curious to see if, again, is that overdone or how well that works, and then is that I think they kind of suggested that the better your quarterback, or no, so no, they said no matter what level your quarterback is, you're going to have all of the hot routes available. So, again, be curious to see how all that works out. They did say that a worse receiver or a less confident receiver may not hear the call in a tough situation or something like that. So, long story short, I'm curious to see how it all translates onto the game.
Yeah, because wasn't that in 14, sometimes in a lot of environments, they would ignore your call and just completely do something different? Or was
I
that
don't
more
recall
Madden?
14 do that, but Madden does that today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sometimes they can't hear you or they act like they hear you and they still run their old route or something like that.
Revamp passing. And this is one that I think we're gonna have to get our hands on the game to truly appreciate or understand. But basically, it looks like it's a passing meter. Determine the kind of the pass it is, the accuracy of the pass, the touch on the pass. Guys, what do you think about this? I know it's one of those when I see a meter, I always worry how it's going to translate to online. But obviously here they're trying to give you more options with it.
Yeah, I'm curious, is it not just the same as Madden's passing system, just with a meter over the top of their head? I mean,
That's what it feels like, but it looks like you can also add instructions like the catch and run option.
well, and you can do that today now as well. You
Oh,
just change the catch button from square to X or whatever it
mhm.
is.
They just do it
You can
differently here.
yeah, you can still do, most of that all, anyways. So again, they're introducing it as a new feature, but I'm curious if it's just, Madden's feature with a meter over the top of their head or
Mm.
something.
It's what it feels like.
It is kind of what it looks like, especially with it's like they renamed some of the terminology as well on the catches. Like I know I watched a video before we came on here. Now I'm gonna forget the terminology, but instead of a possession catch was a secure catch. I mean, there's something like
Yeah.
that's the same thing for
It's
Madden, it's
it,
just different words.
yeah, instead of a rack, it's
It's catch and run.
a
That's right.
catch
Yeah.
and run. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a couple of different scenarios like that. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think it probably is going to be very similar to the Madden system. It's not going to be a total revolution, but at the same time, the Madden system to me is a good one. So it's
Mhm.
not a bad thing that it is.
Yeah, especially like where you're putting the ball high outside, something like that. Those are some good things that Madden did there. So it's definitely not a bad thing if that's one thing that they copy over, one of the things that they copy over from Madden.
I know the terminology. I want to talk about this a little later, but everybody's still a lot of people are worried about being a Madden reskin. Well, I wouldn't expect them to rebuild the whole thing literally and try to avoid anything Madden has. I mean,
Yeah.
Madden's not an
Yeah.
awful game. It's number 3 bestseller in the country last year. So it would be silly to just do the opposite of Madden just for the sake of saying you're not a reskin. But we
It's
can talk
funny
about
how
that later.
almost every community video starts with "This is not a Madden reskin." So it's
I,
almost like they were
that
told,
What do you
paid to
think the
say
first
that or
line was?
something.
What do you think the first line they heard in the meeting was?
Well, no,
I'll
that
give
was the first, middle, last, and every other sentence in between. I mean, I guarantee it.
that was the sign above the door they had to tap when they leave. It
Yeah,
wasn't a
yeah,
win bar. It's
yeah.
not a reskin
This
bar.
is not a Madden reskin sign.
This is one that the Madden fans are really ecstatic about, and when they see this in being in college football, and I think they want it in Madden 25. It's the switch stick. The way I understand it is on pass plays, kind of maybe bait the receiver or bait the user player, especially act like you're going to control maybe a linebacker. Then once the ball's in the air, you can flick that right stick in the area direction of the where you want to switch to. And as we see in this clip, it goes to the defensive back. He takes over, makes that interception. That's one I think it'll definitely take some stick skills and timing and patience and remembering to do it, which is probably the big thing. Do you have time to do it when you want to do it? What do you guys think of the switch stick?
As long as it goes to
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm curious, did they say it's strictly the passing game, or let's say you're trying to get the right tackler on a running play.
No, I know, I read and heard it's only on pass plays.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I definitely I would welcome it on running plays as well, so that you can get the guy further downfield or whatever you want to do. But my fear is, to me, this is a great thing. The defense needs more control. They need something to combat the offense. My fear, though, is one of the videos kind of showed that it looked like the defender was able to peel off his deep. I think it maybe even this play, but he's able to peel off his deep coverage almost instantly. It's like he turns around without any effort at all. And that would be my fear, is that they're able to, completely change their trajectory of how they're running to be able to turn around and intercept it or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
that one play that they showed when he was throwing it to, I can't remember what schools were on there, but it was the quarterback was throwing to the left, but it was also an example that the quarterback had been either rattled or wear and tear. So that also played into the part where he threw just a complete duck to allow the guy to do the switch with the stick and get an easy pick there.
yeah, definitely. I mean, a duck, sure, be able to intercept it, but if you're covering a guy that's running a go route and you try to peel off and cover the curl, to me, that's not very realistic. If the quarterback makes the right read and throws it to the right place, then I don't want the defense to be magically able to play three receivers with one guy or something like that.
Yeah.
That said, the offense still has tools in their belt, with pump fakes or any other, things like that, to where, hopefully it's not overdone. But again, have to wait and see once we get on the field.
One thing, I went through a presentation I'm in here just while I'm thinking of it. And some of these clips that they've shown and in the trailer, I noticed the player name underneath them. Some of them, they're different sizes, so maybe it's still a work in progress. It's way too small. It needs to be larger. Hopefully that's a accessibility option. And hopefully it's a white text with a black border, because if you're playing in a snow game, I'm afraid you're not going to be able to see what the name is underneath the player. Small detail, but I know EA, it took them several years on some like Madden and State Football in the past to finally get it to a good spot. And my concern initially here is that it's not off to a good start.
Yeah,
and it's strange that it only shows for certain players in certain situations. Even the quarterback doesn't always show it. So again, I don't know if that's just because it's pre-release footage or what the case may be.
Maybe different options. They didn't have it on for some.
Yeah, exactly.
But I noticed that too. It's weird.
Yeah. I'll be curious. But even like a quarterback hands it off to the running back, and all of a sudden the running back shows it. So again, it's it's pre-release footage, so you can't take everything with 100% as the final product. But definitely we'll be curious. Like you said, the accessibility options, hopefully that there is some customization you can do there.
Yeah, and without the ESPN license, I think they did a really good job with the score banner compared to what we've had in Madden in the past few years. I think they've done a real good job with what they got here in college football.
And you can tell this is a dynasty game. Some of the other clips were not dynasties because it has the record underneath. Yep. Looks like in the play now, it gives you the team name underneath, like Mountaineers or Cougars. Here, it gives the record. It'll be interesting to see if it gives the conference record once they get to conference season, or once conference games are complete, if it'll give overall and conference together there. But that is a good. The score banner, people were upset about no ESPN, but I think as of right now, the community is fine with this. It'll be when the game comes out, if there's something we don't like about information, that's when we'll find out for the first time if it's good or bad. Playbooks and team styles. They talk about over 1,500 new plays. Let me point out something else here. Throughout this blog, I noticed there were a couple times they talk about new plays or things they changed or things they updated. From what? This isn't a Madden reskin, so what did you update or change or add from? But anyway, let's go on.
Tap that sign.
1,500 new plays, more than 50 formations. They are pretty confident. I heard this in several media articles that they truly have 134 team playbooks. And there's also 10 non-team playbooks. So I know a lot in the community, they like to play with a non-team playbook. They like to use maybe, for example, the air raid or multiple or pistol option. I mean, they're all there listed. Looks like for year one, also the veer and shoot. I believe it was Bud Elliott in the Cover 3 podcast had said, talking with Anthony White, that was a challenge to get that in there, to get the logic in, but they got it, which will help a lot with teams like a Tennessee, for example. That was the example he used. So it looks like they're trying to get the game to be as unique as possible for each team. It talks about they can be customized and saved as a custom playbook. And I forget who said it. I'm really sorry. I believe it was Robbie Calland. The only place I saw this is that he uses the P word, promise. He says that EA, not at launch, but at some point, there will also be custom audibles. I don't remember seeing that anywhere else, but I know I believe it was Robbie Calland had that in one of his articles over at Uprocks. So we do have custom playbooks. Down the line, we may have custom audibles. So there's quite a bit going on here. They talk about player control, a new type of trick play, the DIY reverse, because you can decide whether to hand it off to your teammate using L1, LB, or keep the ball and run. I think that's what we saw in the initial teaser trailer or reveal trailer of Syracuse with that reverse. I think they were trying to tip us off about the reverse being in there. I wondered, I knew it was a reverse. I didn't know that there was a user option element to that, obviously. And it says that this introduces plays like the halfback direct DIY reverse. So goes into the trick plays, talks about the glance RPO. Quite a bit here. And like I said, we mentioned the wide formations and splits goes along with that veer and shoot for Oklahoma, Tennessee, for example. Guys, what do you think? Obviously, we don't have it in our hands. So we can't see the complete balance of the playbooks, which is another community concern for, I'd say, forever. If that can do everything from every formation. But what do you guys think when you heard about what they've added or put in the game?
The first thing I took away from it is that they recycled an old marketing term. Back, I don't remember what year it was, but they had 120 ways to play. Yeah. So now I've heard them say 134 ways to play. So they, again, recycling the old marketing. But yeah, but we've got 14 more teams, so it's different. Yeah. But yeah, no, long story short, the more plays, the more uniqueness from each team, the more you can kind of keep your opponent off balance, the better. Again, we'll have to wait and see how it translates, to wait to see, are the plays truly different, or, is each formation fully fleshed out, or is it, some formations only have 6 total plays or something. We'll have to wait and see. Again, offense sells games, I guess, but they mention the defense, but they don't really go into depth about the defense.
No.
So again, I'm hoping that they also added a lot more defensive plays, but maybe the fact that now that you can change your shell, that maybe that gives you a lot more flexibility in and of itself. But we'll have to kind of wait and see. I think you guys may know I love 3-3-5 and 4-2-5, so I'm anxious to get my hands on those. There was something that they kind of did make a specific mention, that the alignment is much better. They spent a lot of time on getting that done. NCAA 14, they finally fixed that after years and years of me complaining. But now, hopefully, that still translates into the game to where the alignment of those unique formations still works well.
And that complaining is why we're all sitting here, by the way. But you're right. It only gives the formations for the defense. We don't get any plays. It does mention the flexible option offense is introduced and has some base plays. I don't know if that's a big surprise in, but I'm glad it's in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're wondering what kind of cheese you're going to run into online, they talk about the tempo game, things they've added with no huddle and now a new turbo tempo type. The no huddle, the players rush back to the line. That's kind of the traditional with the wire. You hold the wire, the triangle after the play. There's no huddle, and audibles to plays within your personal group are still possible. The difference here is the turbo, they rush back to the line, and that's activated by holding square or X post play. They compare it back to the blur offense at Oregon, but you do not have the ability to hover or audible at the line of scrimmage. You get the advantage of the defense not being set and the line being slower off the ball. For this to be effective, you need to snap the ball quickly.
Can you fake an injury in this game?
And that's what Indiana has that option, I believe. If you want to define this as your style of play, it says you can turn that setting on in your coach adjustment settings. So hate to say that, but I have a feeling online, if you go on, you're going to see a lot of tempo. Could be wrong. That's just when I see and smell cheese, I'm going to call it out. It talks about AI teams are now going to exhibit the identities at their tempo. So Oklahoma is going to be up tempo, and it talks about the might take a shot play at certain times, and Michigan may not do that. So and it talks about later on the real-time coaching, but it seems like they're really trying to get the computer to be smart as well. That was our concern for, the 3 years leading up to this, wondering anything cool they added for the user, will the computer be smart enough to do it? And it sounds like they're trying to do that. And they also mentioned timeout usage, and also where the players or AI are about to audible, they'll glance toward the sideline looking at the play call holders. That's something in some of the trailers people noticed. You could see the guys on the sideline holding up the play cards. I know we can't really see it here, but they are very much in the game.
Yeah, we were talking about that last show, kind of how if that's going to be a possibility to differentiate between the two. And sure enough, there it was. It came out.
Also, the walk to the line is back and officials spot the ball. So the example they give is if it's late in the game, you don't have much time, you got to wait for that ball to be snapped. Tommy, what do you think about all this timing with the no huddle and turbo and the AI doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I think this is a good thing.
Mhm.
It's ripe for cheese though, so we'll have to kind of wait and see how it works. But hopefully with the wear and tear and maybe players losing stamina. So if your players have all low stamina or they're highly injured, you're not going to be able to run this very well or something.
Mhm.
Again, we'll kind of have to see how all of that combines and translates. But at the end of the day, this happens in college football today. So I would want them to
Mhm.
be
I
able to
agree.
differentiate between a slow no huddle versus a turbo no huddle.
Right. I agree completely. Even if it can be exploited, hopefully they can find a way to tone it down, but it's got to match real life.
Yeah,
It's
hopefully,
great they added it.
yeah, hopefully the wear and tear and the mental abilities really kind of deteriorate the more you try to do that.
Real-time coaching. This is something that when you do this whole section, I think what's most important is to read the last line of it. They say it's just the first year of it. The groundwork for the ultimate strategic experience has been laid, and we can't wait to see where it goes from here. And we'll get into the details in a minute, but when I read this, I think they're setting the groundwork for real coaches. Like they want to get every possible coaching AI option in here, and then when they go get the real coaches at some point, they can say that Kirby's like Kirby, Lane is like Lane. Matt Rule's like Matt Rule, for example. It talks about in the engine, coaching aggressiveness possesses unique adaptive adjustment levels. Different coaches react and adapt differently to successful run or pass games, creating a more dynamic and unpredictable game environment. And the AI has the same option than Access.
Yeah, I think, like you said, this is setting it up for coaches to come in and kind of have different tendencies.
Mhm.
But I'd be curious if they say it's early, this is the first year of it. I'm curious if they're using players, like the results of how a player does it, they're using it to train AI for the future
Mhm.
so that it will learn and it will adapt and will, follow suit. If everybody calls a timeout with,
Mhm.
15 seconds left, then the AI does it. Or if everybody waits until 1 second, then the AI does it, kind of thing. Definitely be curious to see and if they have different personalities that you can truly differentiate between one versus the other, or is it a coach will change between personalities, so to speak, between different games or something like that.
Mhm.
And you wonder with AI, you wonder if you can implement real-time statistics into this as well as games get played. Can they compile that data and kind of put it into this type of engine or not? It'd be interesting to see if they can implement the real life kind of results from the college football season.
I like that they mentioned that if you, some of the AI will, if you run a lot, they'll load the box earlier than others. So let's say they had real coaches one year, and if they consider whoever the 134th best coaches or 136 with Delaware and Missouri State coming in next year, if that coach absolutely never ever adjust and that guy has a real license in the game, so that could be a good thing for humor to look for in the future.
For the trenches, they talk about, some of the offensive line changes and things there. For anybody who hasn't played Madden since NCAA 14, the past couple of years of Madden have really, really improved for especially like downfield blocking and pulling blocking and things like that. So if you've not played Madden in the past year or two, then definitely, expect something much better, far and above what NCAA 14 had. Again, that's something Madden has, so you
Mhm.
can't say it's not a reskin in that level, but at the same time, it is a far improvement from uh, from what NCAA 14 had.
A big one that community's always wanted is better weather effects. And I will be honest, I forget which media members I read this from. One media member said he didn't feel the weather effects were enough, and the other one said, "Oh no, it's great weather effects." So basically talks about throwing a or handling a wet football is a challenge. Playing in snow, the movements are a little slower, maybe different, maybe they fall a bit more. Just it mentions that weather will play a role, and I hope to goodness this is accurate. Like I said, the media was a little conflicting on it. So what do you guys think about this? And it does say it'll impact special teams, which I think is very cool. That's usually where you almost sometimes you see it more in special teams than you do
Mhm.
through regular play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the cover three guy, I can't remember what his name was,
Bud
but
Elliott.
he was talking about how it took him 2, 3, 4 games just to get used to the kicking, and then you put the weather into it, and it added a new wrinkle to it.
Mhm.
And I guess the videos I watched, most of the guys I saw, they said the weather was a tremendous difference. So I don't
Mhm.
know, maybe it was just a couple people that didn't maybe try to expand their play styles or whatnot. But a lot of the people that I watched seemed like the weather was going to play a big deal. And it's interesting, it's not in the first trailer. So I wonder if it's going to be its own trailer where they show off the differences there. But I found it interesting that we didn't see any weather at all in the first gameplay trailer.
Presentation's the next one, I believe. I've heard that a couple different places, so I'm gonna guess it shows up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that they haven't really talked about in terms of weather is does it dynamically change throughout the game? I mean, if it's pouring rain for all game long, yeah, that happens, but to me, I'd want it to kind of taper in and out a little bit throughout the game. I'd be curious to see how that impacts it. That, and then obviously dynamic time of day, does that change over the course of the game or not?
Yeah, it'd be great to have, if you're kind of dealing with a little bit of drizzle and it's affecting your play, but then the sun comes out at halftime and then it's dry and it's a completely kind of different ball game that you're playing in the second half. It'd be really cool if that was true.
A new kick meter introduced into the game. The visuals of the background at USC here looks really good with the night lighting. I have to say that first and foremost. That's the first thing I noticed. The kick meter, basically you get to pick the accuracy, then your power, I believe, is immediately where you hold it down, I believe.
Yeah.
So we get to play it. It's tougher to tell. This is also the same for punting. Did everybody? I assume so, but I don't know that I ever specifically read that.
I'm sure it is, but no, they haven't said that specifically. They focused on field goals and PATs. But like you said, it is you press the accuracy and hold it, and then you release for power. So again, it's a new mechanic. I'll be curious to see, is it truly more difficult, or is it just something that take you a week to get used to, and then after that it's back to the same old as before. Again, I hope that stats are a big part of this, or excuse me, ratings are a big part of this, because on NCAA 14 I would recruit just the guy with the strongest leg. I wouldn't care about accuracy at all, and I'd still have 100% field goal ratings.
Same with punters.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll be curious to see, do ratings truly play into this.
Yeah, the blog says it's going to be a smaller green zone, but I mean that you have a USC kicker right there, and that green zone does look kind of small. So of course it's a work in progress, so it's going to be hard to tell. But I'd really be interested to see if, say, when we all get into our online dynasties and we're all starting with them 1-star schools, it'd be interesting to see if we may have to go for it on 4th down a lot more often because our kickers aren't going to be as good. So it'll be interesting to see if that's the case out of the box. It'll be kind of cool to see if there's a big difference between the small school and the big school in this case.
And they mentioned in some of the articles that if you try to go for max power, if you give max power over power, then that screws up your accuracy.
Kind of like golf, the golf meter.
Yeah, so that'd be interesting to see how that works, because right now in a lot of football games, once you got the accuracy right, you didn't care. You could max out the power, and it wasn't a detriment. We don't get to see this in any of the clips or videos, but they talk about a celebration system after touchdown specifically. 20 different touchdown celebrations, 4 interception celebrations, and 4 first down celebrations. So that doesn't scream a ton of variety, especially for first downs. Hope none of the 08.
Hope the lasso's in there. Come on.
I hope that's not back in the game. We don't see. I mean, they tell us how it works. Don't get me wrong. You hold in. When you score, you press in one of 4 directions on the right stick. You can then combo with a left bumper, left trigger, or right bumper, right trigger. They mentioned swagging out, getting pumped, taunting the crowd. Do we know, does this pop up on the screen? Have we seen a video of a touchdown being scored in any of these clips? Does it pop up like Madden, or is it kind of behind the scenes?
No, it doesn't show up on screen, I don't think so. Sorry, we haven't seen a touchdown scored in the regular presentation. So no, I don't think we know either way. I'm hoping it doesn't, because I hate the way Madden does it. But at the same time, yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Hopefully they add all the taunts, and that's the one thing I've seen from people. Like, they want to
horns down.
Like, that one probably won't be in. But if you're playing somebody that has, like for Miami, turn it upside down, Wisconsin, turn it upside down. I mean, for the most part, like that kind of stuff, I've seen people, they really want that in there.
I'd be curious, can you get a penalty for taunting or for over celebrating or something like that? I mean, obviously that's big difference between that and Madden, or
right?
NFL rather.
And the last thing they talk about is the victory formation. Pretty basic, but I think it's going to be a cool thing for online games. Once you get to a point where you just can take a knee to end it, that first knee you take will end the game. Basically, the clock will run out and players will run on the field and be over. Obviously, the big joke online was Miami football is not going to have this option. I think it's one of those nice addition. One small, as we wrap up the blog finally, it was a long blog, great blog. The small thing that bothered me is I really hate that they used footage from the previous trailer and screenshots from the previous blog and trailer in this for like B-roll footage. There's 134 teams ways to play. You think there'd be 134 teams to get screenshots and videos of. Small thing, but kind of wish they had put a little more effort into that part of it. Otherwise, everything that Scott O'Gallagher wrote, I think, was pretty well received. So let's go to community reactions here. We asked the community, now that you've had time to take in all of the gameplay news for EA Sports College Football, what gameplay feature are you looking forward to most? Let's go through this. Ryan Guthrie says disguising coverages. Defense has needed some enhancements to make that side of the ball more interesting. Mufasa, the quick switch is going to be fun. I'm going to skip that, jabroni. Taylor Malone says the quick switch on defense. Nothing more annoying in Madden than my defensive back being completely out of place and me being helpless to it. Wear and tear will change the whole strategy of what plays I pick and fighting for extra yards. Is it okay to be excited about everything? I will say wear and tear is the easiest feature to envision. They showed it quite a bit between the blog and the trailer. So I can see why that's probably going to be number one for a lot of people because we can see it.
And, if you take 50 shots during the game, is that truly going to slow you down? Or are there players that aren't going to, they're not going to be phased?
Is it toughness or strength rating that is the deciding factor? I think I've seen that written both ways, and I don't know if I ever got a definitive answer. Did you guys
that's
see?
a good. I think it was strength is what I remember hearing or reading, but I can't remember that for sure.
I thought at two different places I read two different things, so I didn't know which one was accurate or not accurate. Quadre says all of it. Lorenzo Jordan's ready to hear about the commentators. Q Toval says he wants to see how wear and tear works out in a dynasty. I completely agree with that one. Zach Jaworski, I'm just glad the crowd will be a part of the game again and make a difference. I agree with that one as well. Blake Sterling says wear and tear if it works correctly. That's the caveat, of course. Running backs, defensive backs, linebackers, recruiting a transfer portal will be huge. I just don't want my quarterback getting hurt all the time. Also, the new passing system. Interested to see how that works. I agree. Phantom Pain 7778. Dynasty Mode. John Cummins, transfer portal is going to be awesome. I sure hope so. We talked to the media guys and creators came back and said it's not a Madden reskin. We can put that to rest. First off, is it fair or not to call it a Madden reskin? And I think the big question is, don't we need to see the Madden 25 feature set first? Because what happens if the Madden 25 feature set comes out and it has a third or half of these features? Will the whole discussion then have to be revisited and changed?
Well, that game came out like 10 years ago.
Oh,
so we already know.
Madden 25
we already
part
know
2.
It's in Madden 25. Yeah.
The Madden Strikes Back. Madden 25
25.2.
Yeah. Do you think, don't we need to see that before we make, and I'm not one that I don't care if it's a reskin or not. If it's a great football game, I don't care if it's half like Madden or not, just for the sake of disclosure.
That's the thing is there's always going to be different features. College football has more option game, college football, there should be more disparity between the top and the bottom teams, things like that. So there's going to be things that separate the games regardless, but I would guess half of these features are going to be in Madden already. The only reason the other half aren't is because they're specific to college. Things like the switch stick, the coverage shell, the wear and tear systems. I would almost guarantee that those are all in Madden. Those are big features that Madden fans would riot if they were not in the game. There's no reason for those to be specific to college football versus Madden.
And just like the passing meter looks just like it came from Madden. Even though they're trying to play it off as something different, it looks almost just like how the Madden has been over the last 2 years. So.
Yeah, and to me, it's funny. It almost is a reskin from the standpoint of that they just renamed the catch types. That is perfectly a reskin. I mean, all they did was change the verbiage for those, but they're going to function exactly the same way. So again, I'm not upset about it. There's always going to be things that college football does a little bit different. It's going to be tuned a little bit differently. So again, those are going to make the game play a little bit differently, but there's certain features that are specific to football. They're going to be across both Madden and college football are going to have passing game. I don't know if you know that or not. So in that sense, they are going to share the same engine. So at the end of the day, there's going to be enough to differentiate between the two natively to where whether it's a reskin or you want to call it a reskin or not, it's still going to be a different enough game.
Key thing you said a minute ago is tuned. It's going to be tuned differently, and that's going to be the key driving thing to separate the two games. Of course, they're going to have the same feature sets. That with the stick swap of the defender, that's going to be in Madden. It's going to be new kick meter. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they want to keep that different. I don't know. Especially with how we're differentiating a good kicker to a bad kicker, and then also the home field advantage. Maybe that is only going to be in college football, but yeah, I would be absolutely shocked if the stick swap and the wear and tear are not in Madden this year.
I think the bigger sin is they shouldn't have from the get-go been putting out there not a Madden reskin. They should have said we're making college football game. We are making this for college football fans. That should have been the talking point, not oh, it's not a Madden reskin. We talked about this months ago. In a way, it's almost at some point, don't you think somebody on the Madden team is like, well, what would be so wrong if it was? They're the number 3 selling game
Why
in the US.
Madden wrong?
But it is funny how so many videos start with that on the community videos out on YouTube. It's like, it's literally the first thing they say.
Yeah, it was drilled into them, whether they intended it or not, or anything like that. It was drilled into them because they all use the same exact verbiage. They didn't say this is not Madden 2.0 or something like that. They all said verbatim, this is not a Madden reskin. So again, whether they intentionally said, hey, go back and echo this to your fans, I'm sure they didn't say that exactly, but they did stress that this is not a reskin. This is not a reskin. So but yeah, to your point, again, it's a football game. It's going to have a lot of the same features. It's developed by the same team. Even if it was developed by a totally different team, outside of EA, it still would have a lot of the same features.
They're going to copy successful ones from the other.
Exactly. So
they shouldn't
at the
have
end of the
said
day, yeah, no, I agree. They should have said, we're building this for college football. We're not building this for the NFL. Focus it on that. That you can say that the game is tuned differently. You can say that the look and feel are different. The player models are different, or something like that.
The market
to
should
say
be
it's not a
it should be wait till you see it. You're not going to believe what you see. Something like that. They had so much fun with it instead of, but that came out like, I'm trying to think the first time we heard that. I know Ari Wasserman, I believe, when he leaked or let it out that he had gone down to give recruiting feedback, I believe he was one of the first ones, I think, that kind of pushed that. They drilled it into those media guys. This is not a Madden reskin. They shouldn't have done it that way. But is it going to hurt them? Probably not. But there will be some people online who are going to call it a reskin. And to be honest,
and still
Tommy,
pay $150.
We're going to talk about Dynasty and Road to Glory, and it's worth repeating what we talked about. I almost been a long show. Thank you for grueling and grinding through here with us. This is something they were presented this information, but they did not play it. I did catch on the Cover 3 podcast that Robbie Callan did try to go into Dynasty, and it crashed his dev kit, the way I understand it correctly. So he did try to go in there for us. So a lot of this is a game of telephone in a way, what EA told the media and the creators and what the media creators are telling us. That's not to say this is all 100% accurate. It's probably pretty darn close. I do want to say before we get anywhere, I don't want to forget this. There was an example of 2 media guys having conflicting information. Jay Marie and I were talking to TGT legend Quizzy, and he asked us, do you know, are they going to update playbooks post-launch? And Chris Vanini on the Until Saturday podcast said not this year, but then on Andy Staples on 3, he said that the EA's goal is to have that ability to add new plays in by the start of the season. So right now we don't know the answer to that. So there's a very good chance that some of this may not be right or could have conflicting information that comes out at a later point. But let's go.
And that could be clarified from the standpoint of the playbooks themselves don't change, but they add new plays that you can add to your custom playbook, for example. Again, it'd be nice if the computer could use it as well. Yeah, it's semantics, but at the same time, that's the only way I could see kind of both of those still being true.
Yep. But you can see just from a casual user standpoint, if you still get all that information, you're thinking, well, this guy said it wasn't, and this guy said it is. So that's the problem with this game of telephone. Dynasty Mode, here's what we know so far that the media and the content creators came out. Coaching carousel is in the game. New addition, you can hire and fire your coordinators, and firings could lead to more players transferring. I believe it was, I don't remember what creator or what media member said it, but each coach kind of has their own, I believe they call it a talent tree. So I think you view it as players who are very loyal to that coach. So if you fire that coach, there's a good chance those players are leaving. So you may want to fire a coordinator to try to get a better skill tree coming in for them, but it's going to cost you players. Now you can edit your own coach. You cannot edit other coaches. I think that falls into the same thing. As we'll talk about later, no exporting draft classes with licenses and rights. They don't want a free way of getting coaches in the game when they know coaches will want to be in the future and get paid for it. Coaches have one of 3 styles you can pick: tactician, motivator, recruiter. They also have abilities, We don't fully know how that works, but they mentioned in the blog that it will tie in to a lot of the new features, and skill trees cannot be maxed out. That is one of those that you can't just go through and max out your recruiting and then go back and do game management like you could in 14. What you'll want to do is kind of figure out what's important to you, and maybe your coordinators either can help stack to make your tree go further or better. We don't know how this works exactly.
Well,
or you let them fill in the other trees that you don't fill out. Guys, what do you think of that part so far?
Well, I think it was when Herb Street was on McAfee recently, or it may have been some other interview, but he said like literally you could play 30 years of Dynasty and not max out your coaching trees. So
yep, there's only so far you can go. Yep.
Yeah.
To me, the styles, that is a Madden reskin from the standpoint of in Madden, you have the different types of coaches that they then get a slightly different skill tree below them. So again, we'll have to wait and see how it, I'm sure they'll cover this more in the Dynasty blog, but to me, that's kind of how it suggests. In Madden, you have 3 different columns. You have one that's focused on, like, if you're the head coach, you have one that's focused on certain skills and things. But then once you get to the offense and defense coaches, you have certain skills that are focused more on linebackers, for example, or something like that. So I'm guessing that's kind of going to be translated the same way here, just slightly different with recruiting, more important, obviously, or something like that.
And they do mention the transfer portal. I don't think they got to see this. I want to see the graphics for it. They did mention when you get to the off season is when it starts after early signing day. That basically it's an L1, R1 to go from, I believe, the high school players to the portal players. You can push players to enter the portal. So channel your inner Dion, guys. And it blends in, like we mentioned, with recruiting. It'll be an off-season feature, even though it seems like it's a year-round thing, the portal. In the game, it's just the off-season, which I think makes the most sense.
Agreed. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to be recruiting and have transfer portal guys trying to convince them go in to from another team go into the portal or something like that. To me, yeah, it's more of an off-season mechanic, I think.
The recruiting system will use hours. That's always a interesting point of contention and discussion. Is will it be realistic? I know behind the scenes it's all the same thing, but how it's presented to the user, will it be hours on the communicating, or a point system we get hours? What I think is interesting is they mentioned, and I'm hoping this is not an exact number, I'm hoping it is a loose number, 4,000 prospects, 32 of them 5 stars, and users or players can sign up to 35 players. If you go through and do the math a little bit, 4,000 divided by that 134, I don't have the exact number, but it's only high 20s. So it makes you think, well, if you then have a 32-man online dynasty and they're all signing 35 players, that's cutting to what the computer can sign, that they're not going to get as full classes as they can possibly get. So I'm hoping that 4,000 is actually closer probably to 4,500 and they just rounded a little bit.
Yeah, doing the actual math, it's right at 30 players per team. So, I mean, to me, that's in real life, you can only sign as many players up to the 85 maximum roster. So I don't know if they're going to incorporate that here or not, but most classes should not have 35 players signed in a single class. It should be closer to 22 to 25, depending on how much turnover you have or whatever. But obviously, again, in this day and age with the transfer portal, you're going to have more openings, so you can sign more players.
Right.
I'm guessing that 35 includes transfer portal players, or is that just recruiting? Or
they never clarified that. Now you say that, I'm sure that is portal as well. So maybe they assume if every team signs 5 portal players, and all of a sudden they're getting the full class. Pipelines are now broken up into inside states. I believe it's regions and cities. I know cities specifically mentioned. I believe also regions as well. I saw somewhere. So this really ties into what Ari Wasserman last year when he said he was down there and mentioned he kind of let the word slip territories, which at the time we guessed and correctly. So we got one right, guys. Territories now, the pipelines are not solely states as we had forever. Now it's regions and cities. What do you think about that? I think it's I think that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And realistic.
They mentioned specifically, I don't remember where it was, it was one of the media members mentioned that, for example, Atlanta is one recruiting region. They specifically said Atlanta, but then Florida will be North, Central, and South Florida or whatever. To me, that makes perfect sense. You just because you sign 5 guys from Miami doesn't mean you should be able to sign players from Tallahassee very easily. It's not the same. I'll be curious to see how it works for smaller states. Do they do like Arkansas, East and West, or something like that?
Right.
It'd be curious to see how that actually works out as well. So to me, this is a great thing. You shouldn't be able to spam certain, if you're signing a player from Dallas, that doesn't mean that the player from El Paso is going to want to sign with you more often,
Right.
So to me, that's a great thing.
Yeah, on top of that, you could see like with the coach abilities, you're wondering, how easy is it going to be to open up a new pipeline if you're a good coach? How tough is it to maintain a pipeline if you're not, focusing on that ability as well? It's going to be interesting if there's going to be any kind of dynamic features within the pipelining system.
Yeah, and I'm curious, is the pipeline maybe more than just the players on your current roster? So like if you've been at a school for 10 years and you've signed more players from a certain region over that 10-year period, then you start to unlock the pipeline, or is it just looking at your current roster? So if you have 5 guys transfer out from one of your pipelines, now the pipeline's dead.
Yeah, because
like that's not realistic. But
no, because of like a coaching carousel, they moved to a new school. Well, maybe that pipeline is now going to be different because that new coach is going to a new school.
Or if your assistant coaches are from a certain state, that might give you a pipeline. They're trying to give values to these coordinators that you hire. So you wonder if they have built-in pipelines.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what that skill tree looks like with as expansive as it sounds, because it's going to be near impossible to fill up. It's going to be interesting to see what all those look like.
Yeah, I am curious for the recruiting and for the coordinators. It's saying that they're going to be associated to a certain coach. So does that mean you're assigning recruits to a coordinator, or is it more that the quarterbacks always follow the offensive coordinator or something like that? So I'm kind of curious how that actually translates.
They talk about deal breakers. They sound like this is both a good and a bad thing for you. A deal breaker can lock a school out from the start with a recruit. If there's something about your school or program that doesn't meet par for them, you're not going to get in with them. It also mentions that players will enter the transfer portal based on how you hold up your end of the bargain with deal breakers. So, for example, if you tell the player he's going to get a lot of playing time and he does not, he's more likely to look at the portal because you did not hold up your end of the deal with a deal breaker. And you'll be given updates on players throughout the year to try to placate them. So if you don't give them the playing time promised, you're going to be told that. So you have time to rectify it. It will not be a surprise to you, at least the way it sounds to us. It will not be a surprise if all of a sudden that player at the end of the year hits the portal.
The other side of this, or two sides of this, is one, they mentioned if there is a deal breaker, you truly will not be able to recruit that player. It's not that you're going to be handicapped. It's truly that you're not going to be able to recruit that player.
Which way it should be.
Game where what was it, like it's too far away, like they're homesick or something like that in one of the old NCAAs. You couldn't sign a guy that has to go cross country because he wants to stay close to home.
That was 08, I believe.
Yeah.
Next gen.
The other side of that, though, they mentioned that you can influence what their deal breakers are, so that if it is playing close to home is important to them, you can actually say, "Oh, it's not that important. You can travel away from mama," or something like that.
Throw some more nil money at them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to be curious how all of that works, and what the game mechanics going to look like.
There's no career recruit feature. I saw that mentioned, so you can't go in and do that. I suppose that's probably a licensing concern that they don't want that in there. Custom conferences is in the game. You can go up to 20 teams per conference. It mentions some of the customization options in terms of number of conference games they play, whether it be 8 or 9, for example. I think you can change the championship game location. So quite a few options. We didn't get to hear all of them, so I'm interested to see when that comes out. And we talked about this on the last show, something that the community was concerned about, and we kind of thought this would be the case. No exporting of draft classes, which makes sense with the license. You can't do it. I wonder, I know it's going to be a lot of work, but if Madden still has the creative draft class, you can make them from that. I did catch Matt Brown on a podcast, and they mentioned that idea to him, and I'm sure he was trying to, cover for EA or not give anything away on Madden 25. Yes. He said he could not confirm or deny if that feature was even in Madden 25, which I understand.
Do they have a separate deal? Do they have a separate deal to where they're already in?
I doubt it. That'd be way too much money.
Yeah.
It's a nice idea.
And you'd only want to make it available to certain players. You wouldn't want the scrubs to also be licensed for Madden.
Right.
Going back to the custom conferences, I think it was questioned, but I'm pretty sure it was confirmed. You cannot drop conferences, so you can't close the Pac-12 or the Pac-2 rather. So that would have been nice to have a lot more flexibility and go to the true 32 team power conferences that we're eventually destined for anyways.
Right.
But at the same time, flexibility is good. 20 teams is a pretty good number, so I'll take that. I think a lot of people, or at least I would like to do, is to kind of go back and move a lot of those schools back to where they belong. Pac-12
Right.
schools back in the Pac-12 and things like that.
Do like
Or-
an old school dynasty where you got like an original Big Eight and things like that.
Yeah.
The Pac-12 just did their final championship with baseball. So are they really in the game now? Or
It'd
like
just be the two
you
schools,
can't?
wouldn't it?
It's
the Oregon State,
it's
Washington State own the
Pac-2.
rights.
Yeah. So
But
like,
eventually they're going to either merge or the Mountain West is going to split apart. Like it's going to fill up. I think it's just going to be,
the brand's going to come back eventually.
that's my guess. I don't know that it's given, or
Then
they,
there's
or the two go to the Mountain West, one of the
and
two.
then there's all this Super League talk too that they're all talking
Right.
about too.
But those schools would
Yeah,
not be in that. They wouldn't make that
I
party.
think that's part of the thing, is that EA couldn't predict the future, so they
Mhm.
kind of said, here is what you can do, but we're not going to totally, they've got a
Okay.
licensing agreement with the Pac-2, so they're not going to, allow you to completely get rid of them. We've talked about that in the past. So
Right. It's understandable.
Yeah.
But as a fan, that should be a great feature.
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
Road to Glory. We know a little bit about this. Again, this is what came through from the media reports and the creator reports. It'll take about 10 to 20 hours, which I think is interesting, because if you play full game, but maybe you just play as your player, so that obviously you get abbreviated experience. 5 positions you can pick from: quarterback, running back, receiver, middle linebacker, cornerback. You can transfer after every season, which I think is pretty
Mhm.
interesting. The 4-game redshirt rule is in. So if you start as a, say, a 2-star recruit, which it sounds like you can kind of pick where you start. You could, if you don't get much playing time that first year, technically then you can get 5 seasons of Road to Glory. The way I understand it, and it's tough because it's a game of telephone, how we got this information basically. You can focus your players' time on training, academics, leadership and position battles, health, or brand. And brand is essentially NIL. And it sounds like you get these situations or choices via your telephone. And I did see one article that had mentioned it was basically like they want to get into some, I think the wording was ethically gray areas. I don't think it's going to be too raunchy or anything wild. But I think they also want it to be where you might think you're doing the right thing, but you could get hurt somewhere else. It isn't like where you can just pick the lowest rating in those 5 categories and always just, okay, I'm going to keep raising that one up. It sounds like sometimes your decisions will backfire.
Would you like to
Yeah,
would you like to rob this vape shop?
You go to the party to increase your teammates' admiration of you, and now all of a sudden you're running from the cops or whatever.
This
Yeah.
is a good way to bring back girlfriends too, by the way.
There you go.
There's still people upset about that. People, when they
one
find out
thing-
about it, are upset.
One thing not on this list that is confirmed that has got a few people up at arms also: no high school. You're starting right at college.
Yeah. That's
Yeah. I mean, that to me, they didn't start out with high school and Road to Glory anyways, if I remember correctly. Tell me if I'm wrong, but back in the first iterations of Road to Glory, you did not have high school. You went straight to college, and
Yeah.
again, and they eventually added high school in as a feature. So
Which was
they'll
just
bring it back eventually in the future, but
Yep.
it was just
for
your
now,
state
it's not.
playoffs. So
Yeah,
If they-
exactly.
if you could make
It's
it more
not-
expansive than what it used to be, then maybe it'd be
Mm.
a feature that would be worth missing. But yeah, I'm not going to be up at arms that I can't start at a high school.
Yeah,
so.
I
the
get
other
it, but
thing
I'm sure it'll be back.
Yeah. The other thing not mentioned here is that you choose what level of player to start with. So you can start with a 2-star, 3-star, or up to a 5-star recruit. And then that obviously influences your starting rating and everything. So, that's kind of substituting your high school career, because that's how
Yep.
you would define your player or whatever. So, the one thing I will say is this does remind me of the Madden feature to the create a player, to where you making decisions on, do you focus on your brand or whatever. So
They maybe are taking some of that from that as well. The thing that I think caught a lot of people's eye and kind of laughed, you can become academically ineligible if you don't do enough of the academic events. Your player will not be able to play, which I think is
I mean,
pretty
that's
funny.
a good thing, because
Yes.
otherwise, why would you put
Ever.
time
Why
into
would you
your
ever do it?
grades? Yeah, exactly. So,
It'd be
Yeah,
kind of cool if you
uh,
get this sort of system could pop up in Dynasty as well. Like you got guys that are on the brink, and you got to try to focus on your roster to get those guys to go to school or something like that.
Yeah,
And
I don't know
they
if you guys have played Retro Bowl College or not, but it does have kind
Yeah, a
of
little
some of
bit.
those things that it says your player's on the verge of becoming ineligible. Do you give him extra study time? But then that pisses off the rest of the team. So
didn't
yeah,
an old iteration of NCAA have GPA?
Yes.
I thought
Back
so.
on PS2. I don't remember the specifics of all of it, but there were things you had to manage and do. And finally, the player can be exported to Madden, which I think that was the biggest given of any feature that we knew that there's going to be some tie in between the two titles. There had to be. And this is
I,
it. The Road to Glory player can be exported to Madden.
I wonder how much lock or prevention there is from using either college players, like the creating your player to be
Mhm.
the exact iteration of a true college player, or an NFL player. Can you create them as a NFL player and still bring them into Madden, for example?
And back in the day, you could have them in MUT too. So it was just like in maybe an 80 overall card. So it was pretty useless by month two, but it was kind of cool that you could do that too from your NCAA Road to Glory and into eventually to MUT. And then, of course, tail end of the series, they did add Ultimate Team to NCAA. So be interesting to see if that's going to be in there at some point during the series.
We're going to wrap up the show here with something kind of interesting. In the EVA videos that we've had between the gameplay trailer and the reveal trailer, very keen eyes have noticed some incorrect details. And of course, the video leads off. We know the game is very much a work in progress. However, as a fan, you got to think better to speak up and say something than not. And you can't think that everything in the game, art asset or detail wise, is still very much a work in progress. Some of the stuff you think they would put in the final to have it done versus coming back 2 to 3 times for updates. So we're going to go a few of those. Mention a few of these here. We don't have all the graphics handy because it's a long show. We're trying to save time for you folks. In no specific order here, the Red River rivalry. This was kind of a big point of contention when the gameplay trailer came out. We had fans on the wrong side. We had, I believe, wrong end zones, just missing graphics on the field. And I think what really grabbed the ire of Oklahoma and Texas fans is that this was an issue in 14. So in one regard, they've had this issue or bug in the franchise for 11 years. I know that's not a fair statement to make, but if you played that game, NCAA 14 or college football revamped, etc., you had to put up with that error. And then you got this trailer and you saw the same issue back for a game that is not a Madden reskin and was rebuilt from the ground up. So I understand that. And what was interesting was EA did, through their creator network Discord, did put out there that the issue had been fixed internally. So they knew about it, already been rectified. Also in that clip, Oklahoma fans, Jackson Arnold looked more like Curtis Jackson instead of Jackson Arnold. Fans not happy about that. They also weren't happy about how beat up he got. I saw one Oklahoma fan who, and I can't use his exact language here.
He got destroyed in that trailer.
Somebody said to a non-Oklahoma fan said to this Oklahoma fan on Twitter, he said, well, at least, you got some clips or highlights of your team because I didn't. And the Oklahoma fan responded with, I didn't see any highlights. I saw Jackson Arnold getting the life beat out of him twice. So I could, and he used different language. It's funny the way he put it than the way I said it. And this is the one that's really kind of a baffling one. Tommy, you're a big Sun Belt guy. I will let you explain what happened here. Walk us through this timeline, and I will show the graphics as you go through it.
Yeah, in all honesty, I didn't catch this myself, but yeah, I posted this screenshot of the Texas State Stadium just because it's highlighted two Sunbelt teams. I thought that was kind of a nice little call out. But then Texas State fans were very quick to point out that they're missing their complete upper deck. In the trailer, they only show one level across the entire stadium, but they're in real life they do have two decks. They've had that since at least 2012. So it's not a new addition or change or anything like that. The other side of it is in the trailer, the stands go much further beyond the end zone than they do in real life. In real life, they cut off it like right around the goal line or just past it. But yeah, in the game, it's showing them going almost to the back end of the wall or something like that. But to me, the interesting thing is, I thought, okay, well, maybe the NCAA 14, they just kind of, did a quick reskin of that or something like that. But no, NCAA 14 had it correct. They had two levels. Pulled up a screenshot as we see here that it shows it exactly how it's supposed to be in NCAA 14. Obviously, the graphics are poor quality, but at the same time, everything looks correct from the standpoint of where it's lined up to be. So, yeah, definitely a big oversight for Texas State fans.
Was this a case where, they basically just didn't realize they had it right, but yet they didn't get any information from the school, so they went with the best they could, even though they didn't realize they had it right 10 years ago?
That does bring up a good point. I don't think we covered yet. Some of the media were talking that EA visited certain number of schools, and we don't know the exact number, but they visited certain numbers.
Or I heard 80 came back. Yeah.
No, that's the thing is they visited a certain number of schools, but then they received assets from 80 schools. So does that mean that 54 schools did not submit any assets, and so therefore they're just having to kind of build it up on their own? If that's the case, maybe Texas State didn't send in any information, and so EA used the Google Maps view from which is just a top down or something like that. Who knows?
Yeah.
So that's the only reason I could kind of give them a little bit of an excuse, but still it's it's pretty easy to see the distinct difference.
But I'm assuming they couldn't just copy and paste with 2 generations now. I'm guessing a lot of that was built from the ground up, so they couldn't just copy and paste. So
they couldn't necessarily reskin it, but they could have an internal tool that just says, all right, take all of this. In 14 there was a million pixels, and now in 2024 or 25 it's going to be 10 million pixels or whatever. So maybe they just do a quick translation for those. It is possible to do that, but whether or not they did that, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's my best guess for that, is the fact that it was just maybe one of those schools that didn't provide information. So, and then EA just didn't realize they had it right in the beginning, so they just went with what they could.
It's also worth noting some other issues. I couldn't find this game when I tried to find it a second time, but there was a Florida State fan saying that their field art was incorrect in terms of when he showed the picture, he said the sidelines are wrong. And I thought he meant that the players are on the wrong side, but he clarified to someone else on Twitter that it's similar to the art here, that the color on the sidelines didn't go all the way for Florida State. Minor detail, but at the same time, but there's enough people down there in that area that, okay, but we don't know what the school submitted in terms of field art. Maybe there's something new this year we don't know about. So that one I could see. Michigan quarterback Alex Orgy tweeted out a picture of himself in the game from the clip and said, he goes, I've never had dreads before. Because a player in the game who is him clearly has dreadlocks. And the last time was Coach Gunn sent this to us. I didn't get it pulled up here, but he had said that Florida's tunnels were wrong. And when I looked at the picture, and it's in the video, the 3 tunnels, it looked to me initially that the art assets were missing because they were pure white. For some reason, I don't know why must have had it pulled up on the video editor, and I put it in slow motion. And as the camera turns, you can finally see on the 3rd one, the Florida logo appears. So it wasn't an asset or issue of being incorrect or missing. It was the lighting, which is something I think I'm the only fool in the world who right now thinks there's some weird lighting issue we're going to find on July 16th. When you're at certain angles and the sun was shining down, those tarps over the tunnels went to pure white. And I know the sun reflects off them. They're not going to be the clearest from every angle, but it very much looked like, it just was overblown, oversaturated white. You could not see it until the camera moved to a certain angle. So with that, all these details, can we blame the community about being upset? We've all read and listened to the podcast, read the articles, listened to the podcast, etc. over the last week. Let's say, last Wednesday and Thursday, we heard the dev team called repeatedly college football sickos. We've heard how they stressed to the media and the content creators how every team was someone's favorite team. Even saw a developer on Twitter who responded to some praise saying it's in the details. There was a lot of a community on community crime. No one from EA downplayed these concerns. No one came out and said, don't worry about it. It's not worth arguing. It seemed like it was always fans of other schools who came out and said, it's not an issue, guys. Why are you upset about it? Can we really be upset at the community, the fans of the community who are upset? I would say no, because it's better to say something now because you don't know come July 16th what's going to be in. And we got to be, now the trailer probably was from several months ago. You could even see in this most recent gameplay clip, screenshots and images that they used in previous media came from that. So a lot of this was they must have sat down at one time and got a lot of the information and media. But granted, we don't know how long ago this was. Maybe a lot of this has been corrected. But do you guys blame them for being upset? I sure as heck don't.
I don't. The only question though is who can you blame? And I don't. We're never going to find that answer out.
Right.
Is it EA or is it the schools or whatever?
Yes.
So we'll yeah, it's going to be a combination of both. But at the same time, we'll never have that full picture. Something like missing the entire upper deck. That to me, that's a big deal.
That's a boo-boo.
Missing that the stripe doesn't go as far, or it's a slight different shade of maroon. Okay, that is less of a deal, But no, it's something that you have to kind of take with a grain of salt. Of course, you're a fan of your school, so you're going to see everything that's wrong with it, but
you got to live with it for
probably
a year.
no one else is going to. So,
True.
You have to kind of, take that in mind with some of this stuff.
I will say that when they do their presentation blog, I hope they have a section devoted to these things, that they go through and see what the community brought up and show the fixed versions of it. Show Jackson Arnold looking like Jackson Arnold, show the Red River rivalry looking correct, show Texas State, if provided these things get fixed, with the correct deck, the proper field out at Florida State, Alex Orji with a haircut, things like that, show that, because that obviously shows they're listening and shows that the details are, and I believe the details are truly important to EA. I do believe that, but show us.
Yeah. And I'm curious, can they make slight tweaks throughout the year that can fix these? If maybe on launch day they don't have Texas State fixed, but a month later they do, maybe that's a way to do it. The other thing that we haven't really talked about is schools sent in their assets, and certain schools sent in future assets that instead of using their existing one. Perfect example is Vanderbilt. They are going to have their future stadium instead of their current the current layout of their stadium. So that's kind of a neat little idea. You'll get to see it as a fan, years before you'll be able to see it in real life.
That's a good point. As we wrap up the show, Air Force in the clip, they have their East Stadium, and I read that that's not finished yet in real life. So we're going to see that in the game before we get to see that in real life during a TV broadcast. So with that, we're going to wrap up this long, lengthy gameplay and game preview episode of EA Sports College Football 25. For Tommy and Jeremy, I'm CDJ. Everyone, thank you for listening and watching. Make sure to leave us a comment, subscribe, 5-star review. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Gaming Tailgate Podcast.